In this video, I'm going to answer the question, are women evil? Now, if you watch content by, say, MGTOW or the Red Pill community, well, there's a lot of reason to think that women are very evil, that they are selfish, narcissistic creatures that cannot truly understand that other people exist other than themselves. However, if you look at popular culture, you can get the opposite idea. You can get the notion that pretty much everything wrong in the world, crime, war, greed, sexual misconduct, that it's all pretty much men's fault, that everything bad in the world is because of men, and everything good in the world is because of women. But as with most things, the reality is a lot more complicated. One of the biggest differences between men and women that I've noticed is that women are much more likely to openly express their negative emotions. Now, in some ways, this is a good thing because men will sometimes keep things to themselves and let them bottle up until it becomes a serious problem. But I've had experiences with successful, seemingly mature adult women where they would do and say things that were just way over the top. I'm talking about fits of rage, screaming, and I've also had multiple experiences with women that I was dating where they threatened to harm themselves if I broke up with them. So women tend to be a lot more in touch with their emotions, but they're also more likely, in my experience, to use them as a weapon. To basically believe that if they feel something, that it must be true. And I think this is something that society teaches women. There's the idea that women are emotional and men are logical. So I believe that society reinforces to women that they should trust their emotions and that they should go along with them, whereas men are taught the opposite. Now, both have their problems because as men, we're taught to think that we're very logical, but in reality, a lot of our thinking is created by biases and unconscious emotions that we don't think about, so we think that we're more logical than we actually are. So men tend to be illogical in a way that's subtle and that we don't recognize, whereas women tend to be illogical in a way that's very blatant. Throughout my life, I have seen multiple instances where women use some pretty dark and messed up manipulation tactics and lying to get control and get power over men. But at the same time, I've seen men do similar things in order to get laid. Basically, men are more likely to be misleading and manipulative when it comes to sex, but women are more likely to be manipulative when it comes to keeping a relationship, keeping a long-term relationship. Both are bad. I couldn't say which is worse, but women are definitely flawed creatures. Women are just as human as men, and women do a lot of messed up things. They can be very selfish and narcissistic, etc., but so can men. A lot of men have had their lives ruined by a woman who, for example, lied about being on birth control, or who divorced them and took half their money, or who cheated on them, things like that. However, men cheat on women just as much as women cheat on men. And men do commit more crimes. Men are more likely to murder, assault, etc., etc. So it's not really a clear women are bad, men are good, or men are good, women are bad. Both are pretty fucked up if you really think about it. Humanity is just inherently pretty messed up. Our psyche is not a perfect angelic thing. We are biological creatures that have a lot of selfish motivations for our actions. And even worse, we have a bias to think that we are moral, that we are good, that we have good intentions. So even when we're doing things to hurt others, we tell ourselves that there's a good reason for it. So when women manipulate men, or when men, say, cheat on women, they convince themselves that it's not a bad thing because of XYZ reason. So ultimately, all humans are messed up, and I don't know whether men are worse or women are worse. It's really hard to say. However, what I can say is that most of the stress and frustration and negative emotions that you experience in your relationships with women can be avoided. You can take responsibility for it and prevent it from happening. There are two levels to this. If women mistreat you a lot and they manipulate you a lot and you end up in relationships with women who are very narcissistic and toxic, it's saying a lot about you. There's a reason you're choosing these women, and you could choose women that are better for you, but for some reason you gravitate towards the women that you're having toxic relationships with. And that's just as much your fault as it is theirs. And generally, the better you treat other people, the more respectful you are, the more kind you are, the more you offer value to others, the better you will be treated. So if you think the world is an unfriendly place and that people are generally cruel to you, it probably says something about the way you're treating others without realizing it. If your experiences with women are more negative than they are positive, there's a very good chance that you're treating them in a way that's bringing that side out. But that's not all of it. Obviously, there are women who are manipulative. Obviously, there are women who will treat you badly, but you can avoid that by having strong boundaries. As soon as someone mistreats you, you have to be willing to walk away. You have to be willing to not accept that kind of behavior. And if you're someone who's getting into these toxic relationships that hurt you more than they help you, you could avoid it by having stronger boundaries in the first place, by realizing all the red flags that tend to be pretty obvious if you think about it. By noticing these red flags and having boundaries, you can avoid having relationships with the kinds of women that are going to lead you towards MGTOW or the red pill or things like that. This doesn't mean that you are to blame for the way women treat you, but it does mean that you can avoid being mistreated, and ultimately that's what matters. What matters is the results you get. Being bitter doesn't really help anything, but being strategic and making sure to avoid negative situations does help you. So ultimately, women are about as evil as men are. You could say neither are evil. You could say both are evil. It depends on your perspective. But women aren't these dark creatures that are out to ruin your lives like a lot of men these days are starting to think in these men's communities. But they're also not magical fairies that are making everyone's lives better. They can be pretty messed up and they can do some very dark things to get what they want. The best answer is to accept the reality that people can be very selfish and women can be very selfish, but understand that there are ways to avoid getting overly entangled with those kinds of individuals. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. That will really help my channel grow because it tells the YouTube algorithm that the video is engaging and that it should show other people the video, so I would really appreciate that. And make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button, because if you don't hit the bell button, you won't be notified when I release a new video.